After being swept for the first time this year to the Tampa Bay Rays, the Pirates return home to play the Toronto Blue Jays, another opponent that's not going to be easy, but is a bounce back almost required for this team moving forward. We'll talk about all of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Pirates, brought to you by BetterHelp.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to that Pirates podcast, everybody. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're at your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. Again, this episode is brought to you by Rocket Money and BetterHelp. We're also featured on SiriusXM during games this year. So if you hear my wonderful voice in the middle of a SiriusXM ad, that's why you hear it. And you always love to hear my voice here at the Locked On Pirates podcast, I hope, at least. And we're closing in on 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So let's get to that number before the end of May, which I feel like we will. And you guys may see a new face sitting next to us here on Friday. This is Austin Bechtold, a fellow Pirates fan who wanted to be on the show. So I obliged. And also congratulations to Austin as well. He's graduating this Sunday. So it is graduation season, as we all know. Austin, how are you today, sir?
I'm great, Ethan. Yeah, appreciate you having me on. I've done some stuff with Bucs Dugout the last couple of years. Cover Pitt basketball as well. I was in Greensboro and Dayton and then Greensboro again, covering them. So I'm going to the game tonight against Toronto. It's a hectic time for me in my life, but it's great to be able to sit down and talk some Buccos with you. Disappointing in the sweep, but overall pretty fairly successful season, I would say, after expectations were not set very high.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, 20-12 still, even after the series sweep to the Tampa Bay Rays. So that 11-game cushion was very important. I talked about that on Monday with my guest, Gary Morgan, that I usually have every Monday. Everybody listening knows that for the most part already. But when you look at where this Pirates team went into Tampa, they went in there on a high. They were 20-9, best record in the National League. They come back out, they're still 20-12. There's a lot of factors that went into that sweep. They didn't really take advantage of runners in scoring position in this series until the last inning of the last game, where they made Jason Adam kind of sweat bullets there for a minute. But you have that they didn't take care of. You just had missed opportunities. You had errors defensively. You had all kinds of other things. On the other hand, you had starting pitching do really well with Contreras, Keller, and Velasquez. Velasquez, of course, goes down with an injury for right elbow discomfort. We'll talk about that a little bit later. For all intents and purposes, I feel like the Pirates beat themselves in this series, and people can go on and on and on and on about the umpiring. I get it. I was upset about it. You guys saw that on my show yesterday. I was very upset about it. The players were very upset about it. Andrew McCutchen talked about it. Derek Shelton said the umpires admitted they missed a balk call in that first game. There was a lot going on in this series. So now that they go back home, they play the Toronto Blue Jays, a team that, to me personally, is no easier than the Tampa Bay Rays. I don't know if those two teams have met yet. I haven't really paid attention too much. But the AL East is a juggernaut of a division, and you're seeing all 5 teams this year. You see all 30 teams this year. What is the MO for the Pirates to get back on track here, Austin? What do they have to do, not only tonight, but for these next 3 games to get back on track and hopefully win this series?
At least for me, the calling card in baseball, and especially in Major League Baseball, there's 2 things. It's pitching and defense. The pitching, especially a little bit late in the first game, kind of fell apart. Defensively, in Game 2 of the Rays series, was just absolutely atrocious. Balls bouncing all over the place, whether it be Castro, troubles in the outfield with Reynolds, and just not being able to score with anybody in scoring position in the last game until Santana ended up with the 2-out hit to bring in 2. There's a couple of different nuances as to why this team, which went in as, look, the best 2 teams in baseball statistically at the time in terms of the overall standings. I would go back to, at least right now, on this game tonight against Toronto. It's Chris Bassett against Rich Hill. Rich Hill's been somewhat consistent I guess
Yeah.
the last 4 starts, after his first 2 starts were pretty abysmal, especially at the home opener. He's locked in, he's found a way, but the offense has also backed him up in those starts and have allowed him to go deeper into games, but also go further into the bag of tricks, whether it be sidearm pitches, not throwing the fastball as much. So being able to have Hill have a productive start for the Pirates to be able to try to break off this 4-game losing streak. And also with that, just trying to figure out defensively, lock in again. They were so solid during the stretch of what was it? They won 9 out of 10,
Yeah.
whatever it was, with a couple of different series victories, a sweep thrown in there at home, to the point where everything was going right. The starting pitching, 10 quality starts. That's what's been the big difference. The starting pitching has been great and they hit, but also defensively and not being able to, especially against Tampa Bay. And I know it's a pretty long-winded answer to the question of Toronto, but Tampa Bay, especially in game 2, you noticed it. How did the Rays win 24, 25 games already? They don't beat themselves. They
Yeah.
let the other team beat themselves and do the small things wrong, and the Rays do all the small things right. Half of the guys, I mean, especially in the bullpen and in the starting 9 even, have you heard of half of them until the beginning portion of this year? Some of the, other than a Rosarena and Wander Franco, maybe not. But I think for the Pirates, going up against another difficult offense to face, but you are back home. If Rich Hill can set the tone, get a couple innings, put up some zeros, 1 through 3 at least in the first couple of innings, then I think you're looking at a pretty solid start against Chris Bassett with a 5 ERA. But also jumping on the opposing pitchers early. The Pirates have been able to do that in the first and second inning, get a lead, and allow your starting pitcher to lock in and settle in. That's what's going to be critical for Rich Hill because they might need some run support against a really good Toronto team.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. You can make the argument that Toronto's offense is a little scarier than Tampa Bay's, even though Tampa Bay statistically does have the best offense in all of Major League Baseball right now. But also, when you go back and look at this Tampa Bay Rays series, and you mentioned the starting pitching, the starting pitchers did mostly fine. Mitch Keller had 1 earned run in that game, although he gave up 5 because of the errors that were implemented behind him. Roansy Contreras had a good outing as well. Vince Velasquez was on his way to another good outing until he removed himself from the game in the 3rd inning. If they do that again with Rich Hill, I believe it's Rich Hill, Oviedo, and Contreras this series, if they do something like that again, especially against a really good Toronto Blue Jays offense, I don't see the Pirates losing this series the way they did against Tampa Bay unless they revert back to what they did in that second game and just forget how to play defense. And the biggest microcosm of the defense that we saw in Tampa Bay was G1 Bay quite literally making a SportsCenter top 10 play that featured on SportsCenter the next morning. And then the literal next play can't determine if he wants to throw the ball to home or first base, and he throws it over the first baseman's head, and it ends up leading to 2 more runs. So I think this is something that, one, this series was a wake-up call for Pittsburgh. 2, this upcoming series for Pittsburgh is a way to show us, the fans, yourselves, and coaching and management, that even though you had arguably the worst possible series that you could have against the best team in baseball, you can bounce back and come back home and win this series. That is what I think this series means. And then you get Colorado after this too. I don't want to have forward thinking on this, but it would be nice to get back in the good graces here and maybe go 4-2 over the next 6. But I like where your thought process is too. Just pitching's going to have to be there, but the offense is going to have to be there too. They're going to have to score with this team. And you heard it a lot in the Rays series. You're going to have to score runs to win ball games. And that's ultimately what the Pirates are going to try to do here. Austin, before we get into Vince Velasquez's injury and what it could mean for this pitching staff overall, I want to let you guys know about the wonderful people over at Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and it helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forget about, And chances are you're one of them. Like that Stars app just to watch one show, or that free gaming trial you never actually used. Rocket Money will quickly and easily find your subscriptions for you. And for any you don't want to pay for anymore, just hit cancel and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. It's that easy. It also helps you manage all of your finances in one place and automatically categorizes your expenses so you can easily track your budget in real time and also get alerted if anything looks off. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. So stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage the expenses you have the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. Lots of rhymes, lots of big words, lots of good stuff there. Of course, on Monday, we'll have Gary Morgan on the show on Monday, and then next week we'll be looking at the Colorado Rockies series. We'll be looking at all the series and all the stuff we got going on next week. We'll have Craig next Thursday, just to give you guys the overview of what we got going on here at the Locked On Pirates podcast. And arguably the biggest news I think that came out of this series here for the Pittsburgh Pirates was news that they didn't really want Austin, as Vince Velasquez heading into that game had 18 consecutive scoreless innings. He was on fire. He was doing phenomenal stuff for Pittsburgh. He was looking like a phenomenal free agent acquisition in the offseason. He goes 3 up, 3 down in the third inning, down 1-0, and all of a sudden we see him kind of grab at his elbow like this, which Matt Capps was trying to be a doctor, but admitted he's not a doctor. And he removes himself from the game, and the Pirates have to have a long bullpen outing game, which is something I doubt that they wanted to do ahead of this Toronto series. But You look at this more from what this pitching staff has done with Keller, Oviedo, Contreras, Velasquez, and Rich Hill, who have all contributed very nicely to the staff. But now you already have JT Brubaker on the shelf until next year. You already have a guy like Mike Burrows on the shelf until next year, who is a guy that in this scenario would have been a very good fit to come up. If this Vince Velasquez injury is serious, how do you think the Pirates are going to take care of it? How do you think the Pirates are going to manage? Do we maybe go 6-man rotation? Do they maybe have a bullpen day? How do you think they're going to handle it?
Well, I definitely don't think that they go 6-man rotation, especially because you're taking somebody out of it who's been one of your best starters with a 1.08 ERA, and other than those 18 innings, I think dating back to the start previous. So the point where Velasquez has been right up there with Mitch Keller, maybe better than Mitch Keller overall this season, just anchoring down the Pirates rotation, where I don't know about you, Ethan, I didn't see it coming from Velasquez, truly. And if it wasn't for Rich Hill, or if it wasn't for the injury to JT Brubaker, we would not have Oviedo in the starting rotation either, who was solid to begin the year, has kind of faltered the last couple of starts. So I think that what might be a little bit lost in this too is you gotta look at Oviedo and how he's pitching, and how, will he continue to digress the way he has in the last couple of starts, or is it just a blip on the radar? But because I think that could factor into what happens ultimately with the Velasquez situation, not with his health status, but if you might have to replace Oviedo for a spot or two. I would think it's either Caleb Smith, the left-hander in AAA, or it's Luis Ortiz. Quinn Priester is not going to get called up just because he's a top prospect and we're in May. And I don't think you need to go any further than that. He probably isn't ready either just because of the amount of starts that he's had in AAA. It's not that many. It's only a handful, over a handful. Ortiz is pitching really well in Indianapolis. I would imagine that they would probably try to work him back into the rotation if possible. Or you could go with Caleb Smith, who's a veteran. You could throw another left-hander in the rotation. I don't know how specific Derek Shelton would want to be, whether it be that I would imagine the Pirates, look, this isn't the last couple of years where they're losing 100 games, and the motive is definitely different this year. They're trying to go out there and win every single game no matter what. Not like it wasn't the case the last couple of years. There's a lot more of an added fire in the belly to be able to get a W at the very end of the ninth inning. And I think Luis Ortiz does that better than anybody else that's in the Pirates organization right now that's not on the Major League roster. I would probably call him up. Now, there's speculation over how long Velasquez could be out. Will it be a spot? Will they just need a spot start for him? Will it be a little bit longer? Will they have to put him on the IL? Who knows? It was more so, I think, the top of his forearm, the top of his elbow that he was looking at, which typically does not end up being as bad as if it is in the lower part of your elbow, which can get into severe damage and you get into what could be like a Mike Burrows and JT Brubaker injury. But speculation aside, I would imagine that Ortiz or Smith would be the call. It would not surprise me if it was just Caleb Smith, just because they want Luis Ortiz to get more minor league innings, as unfortunate as it might sound. But until we know the status of what Velasquez is, you just kind of hope that he's able to go. Maybe if you just skip his spot once. And I think an off day is coming up. I might be completely wrong on that, but that could allow you the opportunity to just skip him, throw the next guy out there. It would be Rich Hill. Throw Rich Hill once again. And if you have to throw, I wouldn't call it a bullpen game, but even if you just decide to go Rich Hill and then just continue out on the rotation, whatever you necessarily can do, it just depends on what the severity of the injury is.
Yeah. And to speak about the off day, the Pirates actually have every single day of Thursday this month and the first 2 weeks of June on Thursday all off. They will not play a game on Thursday for 6 weeks. So
that's pretty consistent.
And actually, while we're talking about this, I just get the notification that the Pittsburgh Pirates tweeted just now that we have placed Vince Velasquez on the 15-day IL with right elbow inflammation. We have also ended Chase DeYoung's rehabilitation assignment and activated him to the Major League roster. And Drew Maggi has cleared waivers and was outrighted to Double-A Altoona. So that kind of switches our entire conversation now, as you just mentioned. Was he going to go to the IL or not? Well, now he's on the 15-day IL. So now the Pirates have to figure something out here for at least the next week or two. I believe Velasquez, his next start was going to be the third game against Colorado, because if they have Hill going today, Oviedo going tomorrow, and Contreras going on Sunday, that would mean Mitch Keller would be the number one. And then I believe actually he would be scheduled to go on Tuesday. So he wouldn't have got to the off day. So it will be interesting to see what the Pirates do with this. And I like your idea of Caleb Smith, because then with Caleb Smith, you're not really having to do much in terms of devoting a lot of time to the guy. You're basically just asking him to give you 2 starts and say, hey, Velasquez is going to be back in 15 days or however long he needs. Probably gets a rehab assignment, maybe in Indy for 1 start just to see how he's throwing, or at least gets a bullpen session in there somehow. And then you're looking at Caleb Smith and saying, do we really want to bring Luis Ortiz up for 2 weeks in May just to send him right back down? I don't think that's something that the Pirates want to do, but this does change the rotation a lot. And this was a rotation that a lot of people looked at in the offseason and said, okay, it's going to be all right. But now that it's elevated those expectations, these kinds of injuries mean a lot more, because one of my cardinal things that I always say about baseball, Austin, you can't have enough pitching. And right now the Pirates are feeling that hard. JT Brubaker, Vince Velasquez, Mike Burrows, all those guys are just not available at your discretion right now. So now you're having to dip your toe in with Osvaldo Bido, Luis Ortiz, Quinn Priester as a last resort, Caleb Smith as a guy that you bring up. So the Pirates are going to get a little interesting here with this. I don't know what their plan is exactly for what they want to do here, but I'm sure that they'll figure it out in some capacity. But right now, even despite all of this, Austin, the Pirates are still the number 1 team in the National League Central. And we're going to look at the National League Central a little bit in depth here with what's going on with these other teams, as well as how the Pirates can sustain it. But before we do that, make sure you check out BetterHelp, because therapy, it's just good for you. It's really great for you. And it's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need for yourself. But when we all spend all of our time giving, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burned out. Therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn twitter.com/LockedOnMLB. So we talked about getting swept by the Rays, Austin. We talk about Vince Velasquez now going on the 15-day IL. Breaking news on the Locked On Podcast Network, acting like everybody doesn't have Twitter to see that before this episode even drops. But despite all of this, despite it all, the Pittsburgh Pirates are 20-12 and have a game and a half lead on the NL Central still. To note even further, they're 4.5 games up on the Cubs, 6.5 up on the Reds, and 10 games up on the Cardinals. The Brewers and Pirates are the only two teams in the division that are above 500 right now. So, they're 5-5 over their last 10, which is the second best record in the division in the last 10 games behind the Cincinnati Reds, who, let's be mindful, they played the Oakland Athletics. Not to spite anything here with them, but when you've built this kind of lead for yourself, especially over the Cardinals, and you still hold that cushion over the Brewers a little bit, is this something that Pirates fans could call sustainable? I mean, is this something where the Pirates may have built themselves enough of a cushion to where they can compete in this division this year with the way the division is shaping out?
I want to make one more note on the Velasquez injury. So with Chase DeYoung now back, they could end up, as you mentioned, they could throw him in there to start, maybe go 3 innings. And just overall, like, Caleb Smith has a 7 ERA in AAA. And it's not like he's blowing down the doors and is somebody who is going to be a consistent starter for the team potentially. Quinn Priester lines up in the same spot as Velasquez in the starting rotation, so could look at that as something out there potentially. Who knows? But is it sustainable? It depends on if you have that consistent starting pitching. What will Oviedo be able to do? Will he be able to bounce back this weekend? Mitch Keller looks great. He looks like a front of the rotation type of guy. That's incredible. And how long is Vince Velasquez out? It's going to come down to pitching, kind of as we stressed a little bit. But also how you play against the teams that you're supposed to beat. And can you play 500 against the teams that are good and are probably going to be in the playoffs? Like Tampa Bay, like Toronto, who's going to be right in the thick of the playoffs. Colorado, like I would say in this series, if you can take 2 out of 3 from Toronto, because you're at home. If you're on the road against Toronto, just take a game. I'm okay with it. But Colorado at home, you got to take at least 2 out of 3. It's being able to pinpoint those series where you can consistently pick up games. And for the Pirates, that's been a little bit of a challenge in prior years. I don't think that's any discussion or any stranger for anybody to be able to notice that the team has just not done a good job, whether it be situational ball, to be able to put teams away. But we started to see a little bit of a turning of a corner this year. Mm-hmm. And there's been a couple of different situations where it was like the first week of the year, but that Boston game when they were up 3 or 4-0, then give up 5 runs in the bottom half of the first. I mean, I don't know about you. I thought that game was over. I thought the Red Sox were going to run away with it. But that's the type of resilience that they've shown because partly, I think, because Andrew McCutchen back on this team has done that big of a difference. And I think he has been one big reason why this team has been able to be at the top of the NL Central. Despite the 4-game losing streak, the lineup has just come out again, and McCutchen and Santana hitting 3 and 4, 2 great additions to the team on and off the field, in the clubhouse. They've been magnificent. And you're up, what is it, 10 games on the Cardinals?
Yep.
10 games?
Yep. They are 1-9 in their last 10 and are on a 6-game losing streak.
When was the last time the last time the Pirates finished ahead of the Cardinals? I don't think I was born yet.
I don't think I was born either because I think the last time would have to be 90. I would say it has to be 92 because it's the last time they won the division. And all the other years when they made it in 2013, they were a wild card team and the Cardinals won the division that year.
Yep.
2014, we were a wild card team, and I believe the Cardinals or the Cubs won it that year. And then 2015, we were a wild card team because the Cubs, Cardinals, and Pirates were the 3 best teams in baseball.
Yeah, 100 wins for the Cardinals, 98 wins for the Pirates, 97 for the Cubs.
So I believe 92 would be the last time that they finished ahead of St. Louis. It has to be. I mean,
Regardless,
because
it's been a long,
yeah,
long time. And to see the fall from grace for the Cardinals, look, you can't, and the Pirates are kind of seeing this too. You can't win the division in April, but you can lose the division in April. And St. Louis, this is huge. You're 10-22, 12
hmm
games under 500. Good luck trying to climb that mountain after
yeah,
the Pirates were 10 games over 500. So when I look at the overall NL Central, and the Pirates have only played against Cincinnati really the most out of anybody in the division. Um,
and
I
still don't
look
see
at
Milwaukee and the Cubs until next month.
right. I mean, they've played Cincinnati what, two different series.
Yep.
So the big difference for me is that the division, and we kind of knew it coming in, but the division is weaker than we could have expected coming into it. Everybody had the Cardinals written in ink at the very top of the NL
hmm
Central coming into the season. That maybe the Milwaukee Brewers will be able to sneak into a wild card, but probably not take the division. It was the Cardinals to lose. And right now, if you flip the division around, the Cardinals who finished in first last year are in last, and the Pirates who finished practically last with Cincinnati are in first. And it's
Yeah.
April. Well, it's May now, but the majority of the ball being played was in April. So there's a lot of different things. Well, 20% of the season has gone by. But I think you have to like what you've seen. And if you can break the 4-game losing streak tonight against Toronto, be able to take 2 out of 3, whether it be whatever game it is, and then take care of Colorado, beat the teams that you're supposed to, I think you're looking at a good track right now. And I think people should just appreciate that the Pirates are better than anybody could have thought at the very
Yeah.
beginning of the year, too. I don't think that should be lost in any hindsight. Like, going into the Tampa Bay series and now going into the Toronto series, maybe the expectations are hampered a little bit, but it was the best 2 teams in baseball. Everybody wants the Pirates to continuously climb up the power rankings. When should they really be in that position? I would put them in the back half of the top 10. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
They've played that way. But the expectations went from at the very beginning of the year, maybe the Pirates can win 75 games to, now they're the best team in the National League. They should go out and definitely take 2 out of 3 from the Rays, who have only lost 5 games. So things change consistently. It's like any sports team in the city of Pittsburgh, to where the expectations falter and waver depending on what the current situation of the team is. But I think right now you have to be positive. You have to be happy what you've seen. Still 8 games over 500, a lot of baseball to play, but just take it one game at a time.
Yeah, and you brought up the starting pitching. That I think has been the calling card of this division for every single team.
Yeah.
You look at the Pirates; they've had arguably the best pitching in the division. Milwaukee is right up there with the pitching. The Cubs don't have the pitching. The Reds, shockingly, with that top 3 of Ashcraft, Lodolo, and Green, have the pitching. They could
Mm-hmm.
pitch with anybody if those 3 are pitching in a series.
They can.
And the Cardinals are just awful in that department. Jordan Montgomery is like their only guy that they have that's a consistent force in the starting rotation for them, and it's killing them. So I agree 100% with the constant saying of if the Pirates continue to pitch the way they do, the wins will come. I'm telling everybody this right now. If your starting pitchers pitch like they did against Tampa Bay again in a series against the Rays, like if they played them again, I don't think they play them again this year. But if they did and you got the same starting pitching, they win at least one of those games.
But I
They,
do want to note too that I wonder what the total difference is for the Pirates playing on the turf in the Trop,
it
because
is
the
very
ball
different.
takes some odd bounces on that surface.
Yes, it's there was a lot of factors from that Rays series that just killed the Pirates. I mean, lots of unlucky bounces, lots of stuff that they're just not used to. But I think, again, if the Pirates continue to pitch the way they do, if the offense backs up the pitching like we've seen on multiple occasions this year where they win games 3-2 or 1-0, we've seen that a couple of times already. Why not the Pirates? I mean, they're 10 games up on the Cardinals. That would mean the Pirates would have to go on a 2-week losing streak, and the Cardinals would have to go on a 2-week winning streak just to be in the same conversation record
Mhm.
wise. And we know that that's not going to happen on either end. So, Austin, do you have any other thoughts about this Toronto Blue Jays series? We know you're going tonight, so I want one of those T-shirts, but obviously I'm not going tonight, living in Georgia and all. But any last thoughts on this Toronto Blue Jay series?
I also don't think that we should count out the Milwaukee Brewers because they
No.
have some pieces as well. But about the series, If you take 2 out of 3, it starts tonight. Every time Rich Hill takes the mound, I kind of hold my breath.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's 43 and he pitches like a veteran, but when he's throwing 75-mile-an-hour curveballs, do you even want to consider it a sweeper, sidearmed, to where he gives up a lot of home runs, man. And that's one thing where he's been a lot better ever since the home opener disaster. I think that I just hold my breath, though, that there's going to be a big swing if he walks a couple of batters or a couple of singles have eyes through the infield that end up putting a couple of guys on, that if he can avoid the big inning, because consistently he can go out there and put up zeros, avoid the big inning, jump on the Blue Jays early, and don't allow Matt Chapman and Vlad Guerrero to have runners on when they're at the plate.
Yeah.
Then I think the Pirates will be in a good position throughout the entirety of the series. And you're going to have a chance for Oviedo to be able to bounce back, which would be critical for this team. Mitch Keller, every time you throw him out there on the mound, is somebody who is solid. He won't pitch in the series. I think Contreras goes on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whenever you throw Rolanzi out there too, other than the first couple of starts of the year, he's been consistent. He's been solid. He's the guy that you would pinpoint and think at the beginning of the year is your number 2 starting pitcher, even though he's very, very early into his major league career. But he has the potential and he has the stuff to be able to do that, and he's starting to prove it. So you have a couple of guys that are veteran. You have Rich Hill as the veteran, 2 younger guys in Oviedo and Rolanzi Contreras that are also trying to prove some things against a potent Toronto offense. If the starting pitching can do the job, I think the bullpen's been great. If you can get into the bullpen in the 6th, even in the latter half of the 7th inning especially, but even in the 6th, I think that it would be solid for the Pirates. Just get a couple of run cushion, and I think they can win 2 out of 3 the way that they've been playing, but they just got to get back to being hot again, which you're going to go through skids in baseball. It's just naturally how the season progresses. But it all starts tonight, and it all starts with a good start from Rich Hill, and I think they'll be in good shape.
Yes, sir. And I am always excited for weekend series. For some reason, the weekend series get me amped up a little bit more. So I'm excited to watch it. Austin's excited to watch it. He'll be there tonight. We get Chris Bassett versus Rich Hill tonight to kick things off here between the Toronto Blue Jays and the Pittsburgh Pirates. My name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Make sure to hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Also follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you follow Austin at Austin Bechtold on Twitter as well for all of his coverage of everything that he does. My name is Ethan Smith. That's Austin Bechtold. This is the Locked On Pirates podcast, and we will see you on the flip side.